me, Brianna, not you." That's what my latest boyfriend told me before he walked directly into the path of a truck. There was barely anything of him, just enough to peel off of the sidewalk. I thought our relationship was going well. It's not like I'm desensitized to my boyfriend's dying or ceasing to exist, but it's almost become the norm. Ben was my first boyfriend in high school, and my longest relationship to date. Fluffy-haired Ben with his dimpled grin and freckles. He was the type of guy who should have been popular, but chose to keep to himself. I met him in the principal's office. Ben was being lectured for sneaking around, and I was handing in a late assignment. All he did was wink at me, and I fell. Hard. We dated for 2 years, and I really thought he was the one. Ben told me he loved me, and every Friday he introduced me to a new restaurant. I was in love. I loved everything about him. On the night before our senior prom, a drunk driver T-boned my boyfriend's car, killing him instantly. After his funeral, it's like he stopped existing. His parents left town, and every time I mentioned him, my parents would slowly tilt their heads and act confused when I brought him up. My brother was the worst for it, considering he and Ben were best friends. But he just looked at me with this weird look in his eye, like his soul had been ripped out. Eyes are the windows to the soul, apparently, and my brother's soul was MIA. Ben? His expression crumpled. Wait, who? Alex was my emotional support, who later became someone closer. Funny Alex. Blonde, but not quite blonde, Alex. I met him in group therapy. My boyfriend was dead, and he had just lost his mother. We didn't label it because he had a girlfriend, and I didn't want to move on so quickly. I think we just found comfort in each other. Eventually, though, Alex became something I wanted to label. His sense of humor was a breath of fresh air. I didn't go to college because of Ben's death, settling for a mediocre barista job in town. Alex came in every day with fresh coffee and a sugar cookie. I think I loved him. I told him that. Half asleep, I told him I wanted to try and be something more with him. Alex looked taken aback, but happy. We spent the night together. The morning after, I woke to my mother screaming. Alex was dead in the bathroom, his blood splattering, staining pristine white. According to the first responders, he died of a self-inflicted head injury. The exact same thing followed. I attended his funeral, and Alex's family disappeared. This time I went back to his house, but according to a neighbor, his house had been abandoned for 10 years. I had eaten pancakes in his kitchen just days earlier. I broke in to see myself, but my neighbor was right. The hallway was piled with ancient mail and threats of eviction. Alex's room didn't exist, instead a storage room filled with boxes. When I got home, my family had already forgotten Alex's existence. The town had forgotten him, and yet his blood still stained my bathroom. Following Alex's death, I was terrified of getting too close to people, but Esme made it hard. She was my third relationship. We met at a bar, and I was extremely drunk and convinced I was cursed to kill all of my romantic partners. Esme. Cute Esme. Crooked teeth and smudged lipstick and warm Esme. Do you know that person you meet, and you instantly connect with them? The person you're sure is your soulmate. That was Esme. I told myself I wouldn't get close to her, but I was already talking to this girl, already pouring my life out to her. Esme sat and listened, her chin resting on her fist. She was a first-year creative writing student, and she had a cat called Peanut. I didn't remember much after that. We hit it off, and the next thing I know, we're curled up in the back of her car watching Buffy on her iPad. I told her about my exes, and she nodded and smiled, but I don't think she was listening. I told her all of my exes have died and then been erased from existence. Esme called me cute. She wanted to base a story around the concept, sitting up and grabbing her phone. I have this memory of the girl I fell in love with at first sight. She's nodding along to a Smiths song, spluttering from my car radio, typing on her phone. I can hear the tapping of her nails, her lips curving into a smile. I can see the exact moment she gets inspiration, pulling her knees to her chest. She's wearing fishnet tights that are torn and a jacket that doesn't fit her. She is beautiful. and I don't want to lose her. Alex was beautiful. He had pretty eyes and brown curls that I liked running my hands through. Ben was beautiful. He made my heart swim, my stomach swarm with butterflies. When I first met him, Ben was my first love. The realization woke me up one night, 3 months into dating Esme. Both of them were dead, wiped away like they never existed, and Esme would follow. At first I tried to break it off with her without sounding crazy. I told her it was me, not her, and I wasn't in the mindset for a relationship. Esme understood, but her eyes didn't. I didn't want to lose her. Esme lit up every room she entered. Her obsession with thrifted clothes and badly written poems, and her irrational fear of pandas, made her someone I wanted to be with. So I stayed with her. I told myself Ben and Alex were just coincidences that were nothing to do with me, and I wasn't indirectly killing the people I fell in love with. I avoided the L word for as long as I could. It slipped out on my way to work. Esme was driving. I just said it, and her eyes lit up, and she reached out and squeezed my hand. At work, one of my colleagues, Jasper, caught my eye. When I twisted around to ask him to grab something, I glimpsed his phone screen. It looked like Tinder, though I didn't recognize the layout. It reminded me of Twitter in dark mode. Jasper was leaning against the counter, his thumb hovering over a photo of Esme chewing his bottom lip. I watched his thumb prance across the screen before he gave up and swiped left. Finishing up the woman's coffee, I handed it over. I asked for cream? Ignoring her, I sidled in front of my colleague, hyper-focused on whatever app he was playing around with. What's that? Jasper looked up, his eyes widening, lips parting like a damn goldfish. Clearly nothing. Jasper sidestepped me, opening the refrigerator and pulling out milk. But he already had milk. But the bastard was stalling. We had 0 customers waiting, so it was the two of us in a long, dragged-out pause. Jumping up and down on the heels of his feet, he shot me his usual grin, slipping his phone in his apron. Jasper may have been smiling, though there was something twisted in his expression. I couldn't stop myself. Was that a dating app? A dating app? Excuse me, can I get what I ordered? The woman demanded, waving her coffee in the air. I asked for whipped cream. Jasper saw that as an excuse, an escape, and nodded, fashioning a grin. He saw an opportunity and took it. Of course, ma'am, I'll get that for you, he said with a little too much sarcasm. The boy took her coffee with a spring in his step, ducking in the refrigerator for the whipping cream. Jasper added too much whipping cream, dumping the drink on the counter with a little too much force. It was a good thing my colleague was a marginally attractive guy with cropped blonde hair and a deadpan voice that somehow attracted the ladies. Jasper could insult someone directly to their face, and they would just blush and get all tongue-tied. I had seen it happen in real time. A girl was flirting with him and used a bad pickup line, which was something along the lines of, "Did it hurt when you fell from heaven?" He laughed and her eyes brightened. She giggled along with him, nudging her friends. But he wasn't laughing with her. I saw the gleam in his eye. He was laughing at her. Still laughing, Jasper plonked her milk latte down so hard, half of it spewed out. And with that exact same charming smile, he deadpanned, "Did it hurt when you dropped out of a drain pipe?" Yeah, my colleague was blessed with good looks. Otherwise, he would have been punched in the face by now. Presently, he was being his usual self. "Is there anything else I can get you?" The woman shook her head, pulling a face. Jasper had, essentially, ruined her drink. It was more cream than coffee. When she left the store, I situated myself in front of him when he was counting cash. "What were you just looking at?" I nodded to the guy's phone sticking out of his pocket. "Was it like a dating thing you were on?" Jasper didn't even look at me, his lip curling. "That's kind of rude," he hummed. "I don't peek at your phone." "Esme Hope?" was all I could hiss out. "Was she on that dating app?" My colleague proceeded to stare at me like I'd grown a second head before his half-lidded gaze flicked behind me. Jasper's expression brightened. "Oh, Hannah is calling me," he said, choking out a laugh. Hannah was not calling him. She was in the break room getting high. Jasper slowly backed away, maintaining his smile. I'll be back in a sec, all right?" He grabbed that same carton of milk with a grin. "Don't you just love when your milk stays fresh?" What? Fresh milk, he grinned. Mulberry's Farm's finest. Jasper was darting away before I could coerce a sentence. After work, I texted Esme as usual. She was my ride on Fridays. Esme didn't reply. I texted her again, a little more panicked. Hey, are you okay? When I called her, an automated voice told me she wasn't available. Already feeling sick to my stomach, I drove to her place myself. I could see the flashing lights before anything else, blurred red and blue, sending my thoughts into a whirlwind. It took me 10 minutes to muster the courage to jump out of my car and ask a pale-looking deputy what was going on. I tried to jump over the yellow tape, only to be politely pulled back. Carbon monoxide poisoning, the deputy told me. The whole family is dead, he sighed. Mom, Dad, and their daughter in college. I think he was trying to be sympathetic, awkwardly patting me, but I was already on my knees, all of the breath dragged from my lungs. Luckily, it's just like going to sleep. Monoxide is a silent killer. Monoxide is a silent killer. Was that the same as, I'm sorry, Ben was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and Alex was silently suffering, he did what he thought was best? I didn't go to Esme's funeral. Mom and Dad and Will had already forgotten her, just like the others. What I did do, several days later, when her name wasn't even a memory anymore, I bought flowers from the store. Roses were Esme's favorite. The seller was around my mom's age, a plump-looking woman wearing a floral dress, long red hair tied into a ponytail. She was on her phone, humming a tune on the radio. The Smiths. I hope she likes them, the woman said, wrapping the flowers in red ribbons. She had a strong southern accent that immediately annoyed me. I took the roses, stuffing them in my bag. What did you say? The seller cocked her head. How did you know they were for my girlfriend? The woman sighed, placing her phone on the counter. I glanced at whatever she'd been so interested in, but the screen was face down. Esme came in here a lot. Her lips broke out into a sad, sympathetic smile. I was quickly growing sick of them. Esme, she told me you guys were dating. Esme was always buying roses for her room. Sometimes she would stand in here for hours and just stare at flowers. I think she found comfort in them. The woman sighed, fixing me with what I could only describe as a pitiful pout. Ugh. I hope you could find the same comfort, she murmured. The seller handed me an extra rose and I found myself reaching out for it, my eyes stinging. Damn. I hadn't cracked in at least 15 hours and that was a record. But now I could feel myself splintering, tears trickling down my cheeks. The flower lady squeezed my hand. I'm sorry, sweetheart. If it makes you feel better, it's just like going to sleep. Monoxide is a silent killer. Her words were familiar. Exactly what the deputy said. Before I could speak, she dumped weed killer on the counter. Did you know our plant killer is $10.99? Her sudden bout of energy took me off guard. I tried to smile. I don't want any plant killer. The seller nodded, handing me another rose. Oh, of course, darling, but it is $5.99 just for today. Something pricked me and I hissed out, wafting my hand. Damn thorns. I could already see a single spot of blood. I nodded, sucking my teeth against a cry. Thanks, but I'll skip that this time. I took the roses to what used to be Esme's grave. Now it was an empty headstone with no name, no memories, no flowers, nothing. Just like Alex and Ben. Esme had been reduced to dirt under my feet. I stayed at her grave for a long time, long enough for the sky to grow dark and my thoughts darker. I tried to find a logical explanation for the sudden deaths of the people I got close to, but all I could think of was a curse. So I started Googling curses, leaning against Esme's headstone, my knees to my chest. Had I been cursed? Was my family cursed? According to Google, a cursed object connected with the curse itself, which could be anything, though I didn't remember visiting any ancient ruins or an old church. With zero answers, I headed home. I passed a guy playing the Smiths in his car, then a group of older women wearing ripped fishnets. Esme was following me, just like Alex's smell, fresh coffee and rich chocolate. Ben's cologne filled my car last summer. His favorite band was playing all day on our local music station. I drove around with no destination, listening to each one on repeat until I was losing him all over again. The sweet aroma of flowers followed me all the way home, and I was tipsy on the smell when I found myself face to face with a boy under the overexposed streetlight. This guy was almost ethereal, thick brown hair and freckles. He reminded me of Ben, which wasn't fair. I thought I was hallucinating him before he came closer, bleeding from the shadow. I saw more of him, white strips of something wrapped around his head. Wrong. The word slammed into me when I glimpsed his clothes. Filthy. The guy was wearing a white button-down, a single streak of bright red ingrained into the material. His white pants were torn, glued to his legs. He was barefoot, the soles of his feet slapping on wet concrete. I didn't realize he was in front of me, nose to nose, until he shoved me, hard. "Josie!" His voice was a whisper. Despite his narrowed eyes, his lips twisted into a scowl. He was crying and had been crying, every heaving sound sputtering from his mouth. The boy shoved me again and I staggered. His ice-cold breath grazed my cheeks. "What the hell did you do to my sister?" "Sister?" I whispered. Something wet landed on my cheek suddenly. Rain. I wasn't expecting a downpour. The weather was forecasted to be clear. To my surprise, the guy let out a harsh-sounding laugh. The two of us were slowly getting drenched, but neither of us were making a move to get out of the rain. My hair was glued to the back of my neck, my clothes sticking to me, but somehow I wanted to stay in the rain. It was refreshing. When a thought hit me, telling me to get out of the rain, it was shoved to the back of my mind. The guy spat water out of his mouth, shaking his head like a dog. "Of course," he muttered. "Drown me out with the rain." I found my voice, my gaze glued to intense red seeping through the bandage stapled to his head. He looked like he'd escaped an emergency room. I don't know anyone called Josie," I said. "I think you've got the wrong person." The guy's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, grabbing my shoulders, and I noticed how hollow his eyes were, empty caverns carved into his skull. Eyes are the windows to the soul, and this guy was completely soulless. "I'm going to say this once," he whispered. "What did you do to my sister?" Before I could respond, the guy was being violently grabbed and dragged back. Fingers who appeared seemingly out of nowhere. "Let me go!" he cried out, struggling. "You assholes, let me go!" His screaming became muffling when his cries were gagged. "You promised!" he yelled, his cries collapsing into a sob. "You said if you took me, she wouldn't get hurt, so where is she?" He met my gaze, his expression crumbling, something inside him coming apart, splintering by the seams. "You can't take both of us? This wasn't in the agreement." When he was dragged further back, I noticed a car parked at the side of the road. The boy was pulled inside. At first, he refused, before an extra pair of hands shoved him in. "You damn bruh!" I heard his fists slamming into the windows. Don't take me back there. Please, just let Josie." His cries were once again collapsed into angry, muffled screaming, and I felt my hands moving towards my pocket for my phone. This was a kidnapping, right? I was witnessing a kidnapping in broad daylight. A shadow was suddenly in front of me, and I jumped, tearing my eyes from the car. Jasper, my colleague, he was still wearing his apron, and to my confusion, was swinging a carton of whole milk. "Sorry, Bree," he winked, speaking in a single breath. "As you can see, our friend here had a little too much to drink." I nodded, craning my neck. Jasper stepped in front of me, maintaining a grin. "Who is he?" This time I sidestepped away from him, only for him to copy. "Just a guy," he said. "As you can see, he's a little..." Jasper prodded his right temple. "Let's just say he's got a few too many screws loose." Jasper laughed, staying stock still, blocking my way. When I made a move to counter him, he stepped in front of me, his eyes hardening. "I heard he lost his family a while ago in a..." He pretended to think. "Oh yeah, a car crash. Maybe a gas explosion? I'm not really sure." I could hear the car behind him, and once again I tried to dart past him, but he was quick to block my way. He was getting closer to me, very subtly, backing me in the opposite direction. Anyway, this guy is kind of nuts. Dude still thinks he's got a sister. When I lost patience and shoved him out of the way, the car and the guy was gone. See? Jasper rolled his eyes. He was still holding milk from work. My head spun. It was 8 p.m. We were in a suburban neighborhood and Jasper was holding half a pint of milk. His apron was stained with coffee, and when I really looked at him, I realized he was out of breath. He was doing a good job of hiding it, exhaling in intervals, swiping at his forehead to clear sweat. When I noticed, he pretended to run his hands through his hair. I feel for him. Like, I'm sorry his family died or whatever, but attacking random girls isn't cool, you know? Instead of replying, I stumbled home. It was sunny at 8 p.m. And when I took notice, I wasn't even wet. Esme was my last straw, and I made a promise to myself to not get close to anyone. The guys and girls I met were friends and nothing more. Weirdly enough, the only guy I was getting close to was my colleague. I don't know if it was brain damage or I was finally losing the plot. But Jasper's shameless cruelty towards customers and that quirk in his lips when he made them cry was kind of hot. However, he was playing hard to get. And I mean really playing. I was in storage trying to find vegan milk, and he was suddenly an expert, spewing milk facts. When I slammed the refrigerator door shut, he was inches from my face. In the dim light from a single spluttering bulb, his eyes reminded me of coffee grounds. I thought maybe he was going to kiss me. Judging from his softening expression, I felt his hands go around my waist, and I felt myself immediately melt. I don't know what came over me. It's like, one minute I hated him, and the next I was suddenly hot, really hot, and I really wanted to take my clothes off. I thought that's what he wanted to do too. I mean, his gaze followed mine, piercing, fingers playing with the buttons on his shirt, before he leaned forward, his breath in my face. Did you know that Mulberry Farms is an award-winning brand of milk in our town, and only our town? Mulberry Farms was bred and made right here. And suddenly I was no longer hot and bothered. I didn't, I said, ducking into a crouch to search the shelves. Have you seen our vegan milk? We did have some. 3-time winner, Jasper continued. When I jumped up, he stepped closer, and I felt my cheeks spark. His smile was rare. In fact, Jasper was only smiling when he was talking about milk. Mulberry Farms have the best pasteurization. It's suitable for everything. Coffee, cereal, or maybe you just want a glass of fresh milk yourself. Perfect for kids too. Breakfast time is Mulberry Farms. Are you having a stroke? I whisper-shrieked. Nope. Jasper twisted around, shooting me a grin. I left the storage, however, with butterflies in my gut. There was no way I was falling for my colleague. Somehow, though, I was. Just standing next to him filled me with electricity. The way he talked down to customers, insulting me to my face, I was thoroughly and disgustingly in love. I tried to stop myself. I showered in ice-cold water. I ate, choked on, a ghost pepper. I even asked my brother for advice, who told me to go for it. I told him Jasper had one of several flaws, but this particular one was off-putting. He's obsessed with milk, I told my brother. Harry lifted a brow. Is that a euphemism, or... He paused for way longer than necessary. So your would-be boyfriend has a milk fetish? I left his room before he could take that conversation further. I wanted to say Jasper was the only one who acted weird, but over the next few weeks, I noticed it in quite a few people. I was having breakfast with Mom, and she lifted up the box. Chocolate flakes, she blurted. Aren't they just the best? I nodded slowly. Yeah, Mom, they're great. I prodded the box with a smile. Only $1.99. There were so many townspeople on their phones. They walked around with groceries or briefcases, their eyes glued to whatever they were swiping through. I was serving an old woman when I caught her phone screen. I could have sworn there was an image of Jasper. She swiped right, and I had a hard time looking her in the eye. The woman was at least in her 80s, and I'm talking can barely walk and needs assistance. Was she seriously hitting up 25-year-old guys? Walking home, everyone was on their phones. I stopped at a crossing, stabbing the red light. It started to snow the second I stepped out onto the road, white flakes dancing in front of me. It didn't even cross my mind that it was almost June. The snow was pretty, accumulating on the ground. Oh, crap, sorry. Lifting my head, a guy was standing in front of me holding an umbrella. I knew him, but not from whatever was trying to pollute my mind. I knew him from a while ago. I knew him from the rain. I knew the bloody bandages wrapped around his head and soulless, seething eyes I couldn't understand. It was the boy who was dragged away 3 months prior. He looked different. His hair was shorter, his face carved into a thing of beauty. The white strips of gauze bleeding scarlet were gone, his filthy clothes replaced with a white shirt and pants, a trench coat flung over the top. I didn't remember him being this handsome. His dark brown hair had been tamed and curled. It was his expression that sent shivers down my spine. His two-eyed smile and unblinking eyes made me suddenly conscious of two bright lights on the two of us. So bright. Something shattered in my mind and I was aware of a lot of things. The snow under my feet felt too soft. I glimpsed a single streak of red seeping from his nose, his hands trembling around a take-out coffee cup. Behind me, people were staring. I could see a group of teenage girls giggling. "It's him," one of them squeaked. "It's the new love interest." Bree. His grin widened, snowflakes prancing around us, his teeth gritted together. I could tell he hated every word. Holy crap. Long time no see. He held out his hand, and I could see visible pain contorting in his eyes. "Help me," he was screaming through a twinkling smile. "Don't you remember me? It's Sam," he laughed. "From 8th grade." The lights blinked out, and the thought crashed into my mind, static images filling my head. I shook them away. Oh, yeah, it was Sam, my childhood friend. But I didn't reply. Instead of saying, "Sam, it's been so long," I found myself walking, stumbling over to the girls, who were rapidly swiping left on their phones. "What's that?" I demanded in a sharp breath. I grabbed for the phone, only for Sam to step in front of me. He settled me with a smile. Behind me, one of the girls fainted. Sam's smile didn't waver, though he did side-eye the girl being carried away. "Why don't I take you out for coffee?" Apparently coffee was the code word for hooking up. Sam dragged me into the nearest coffee store, straight to the bathroom. When he shoved me into a stall, I didn't know what to say. "Take off your shoes," he said in a hiss, and after hesitating, I did. Sam pulled off his jacket, shook snow out of his hair, and got real close. "Look up," he murmured. I did. I found my gaze finding the ceiling. To your right, a camera is very well hidden, but can be seen with the naked eye if you catch what looks like a red laser, Sam said. To your left, another camera, as well as a vent that is currently pumping the stalls with aphrodisiacs. And right now, we are in the red zone, meaning you should be conscious. He prodded me, and I flinched, mostly conscious. His words went right over my head. My mind was foggy. I couldn't think straight. I think I asked him what he was saying, but my mouth was filled with cotton. "Snap out of it," he said. "Like I said, they're making you feel this way." He shoved me against the door, which broke me out of my trance slightly. "I hate what I'm going to say right now." Sam groaned, tipping his head back. He was sweating, I noticed. Bad. I glimpsed beads of red pooling down his neck. He noticed me staring. "I'm okay for now." I'm faulty, so the connection is severed. He squeezed his eyes shut. I think. "What are you talking about?" "Sex," he said, blinking rapidly. I wasn't going to comment on his slurring voice. Sam stumbled, and fresh blood dripping from his nose. "We need to do the sex. Like..." His eyes rolled into the back of his head, but he managed to stabilize himself. "Now..." "What? Is everything okay in there?" The voice was a woman. She knocked on the stall. Sam's eyes widened, coming back to life a little. "They're paranoid," he whispered. When I could only stare at him, he pounded his fists into the door. They think we're screwing, he hissed, so we need to make it believable. They? He didn't reply, swiping at his hemorrhaging nose. Just, move around against the door. That'll fool him. I did, doing my best to shuffle around, slamming my back against the lock. When the metal clanged, he shot me a look. Sex, he said, not murder. Sam jumped onto the toilet bowl. There was an open window above him. That's enough, he mouthed, hoisting his way through. He helped me through, and I expected to land on concrete. What I did land on, however, was something squishy, something wet sliding between my bare toes. Looking closer, I recognized the beaded anklet, fishnet tights. Something animalistic clawed from my throat. I was standing on Esme, or what was left of Esme. She was just a torso and legs, the rest of her ripped away like doll pieces. I couldn't see her face. I looked for it, digging through what could only be old flesh and pieces of limbs. I felt suffocated. I grabbed half of Ben's face that had been ripped off, and then Alex's tattooed arm. There were so much of them, piles and piles of the same heads, the same filthy and rotting clothes. I was screaming by the time I shuffled back on my hands and knees, trying to wipe them off of my skin. They were all over me, staining me, painting me. Sam's hand, slick with blood, gently covered my mouth. Stay calm, all right, he whispered. I would tell you everything is going to be okay, but the truth is, it's really not. There's like a 99.9% chance you're going to, understandably, freak out. He pulled me to my feet, letting out a heavy breath. Blinking rapidly, I could only see pieces of people. Legs and heads and torsos all piled into one mass of gore. We've got maybe 5 minutes before they realize we're not doing the devil's dance. Sam sniffed. Maybe 10 before my brain short-circuits and I bleed out. I didn't know I was hyperventilating until I couldn't breathe. Closer towards the door, I could hear machinery. I couldn't stop myself, even when I was aware I was standing in congealing blood, rotten bodies. The dim light led me into what could only be described as a factory. There were 3 levels, and we were on the highest. Sam stepped forward, gripping the metal bar in front of us. I felt my legs buckling, a thick, pukey slime filling my mouth. So, I guess it all started when Brianna Timmerman was 17 years old and rejected by her childhood best friend, Sam Thwaites. Sam's words collapsed into a low buzzing in my ear. All I could see was a conveyor belt filled with people. Boys, girls, but most noticeably, Ben's, Alex's, Esme's, and Sam's. But they all starred as Ben's, Alex's, and Esme's. I could see regular people, their hair stripped away, their skin sliced into, cruelly molding them into the exact same 4 faces. When a large, looming needle plunged into the back of an Alex's head, I couldn't not watch. I waited for the guy to wake up, but I don't even think he was alive. He stood unblinking, letting this thing twist and contort in his face. And it was then when I realized these things weren't even human. I could see the mechanics built under their flesh, both living tissue and metal melded together. Brianna's father, who was a little on the crazy side with too much cash and not enough logic, took his daughter's rejection a little too personally. Sam continued. So, he promised his daughter he would find her the perfect match. I started to speak, the words coming out before I could stop them. My father would never. I didn't say it was your father, Sam said. His eyes darkened. Anyway, as I was saying, the townspeople became unhealthily obsessed with who Brianna would choose. So obsessed, in fact, that the girl's day-to-day life was broadcasted across town, while her potential love interests were ranked week after week. First, there was Ben. Sam's smile thinned. Her high school boyfriend. Sam shrugged. She grew bored of him. Also, he kinda did something unforgivable. He continued. Then, Alex. She liked him, but sometimes he was a little too unserious. The guy was a clown. I backed away, but he was quick to grab my shoulders. Finally, Esme, who she truly fell for. I swallowed. Esme is... He cut me off, but I didn't mention that they hurt her, did I? Sam leaned against the bar. Behind him, I could see a figure in white pushing a gurney with a Ben strapped to it. Ben tried to rape her, insisting she wanted it. Alex dumped her on her birthday. Esme ended their relationship with a one-word text, goodbye. Sam mimed an explosion. That was the nail in the coffin. I caught blood sliding down his nose. You're still bleeding. Sam gingerly prodded his nose. Yeah, it's an effect of the severing. I've been in the red zone too long. I should probably speed this up. He talked faster, his voice collapsing into a mumbled slur. Brianna couldn't take it. Her best friend was ignoring her. Everyone she had fallen in love with hurt her. Esme wasn't returning her calls. Ben was sleeping around right in front of her, and Alex was still being a clown. Brianna's poor parents found her hanging from her bedroom ceiling fan. I shook my head, my thoughts screaming. No. He held a finger up to shush me. Let me talk. Jeez. Sam folded his arms. A grieving father would do anything to avenge his dead child, but Mr. Timberman took finding a perfect match, and the show must go on a little bit too literally. His sickly smile found me, which also means going stark crazy. The town wanted more of Brianna in her life, and he turned his daughter's failed love life into a town-wide TV show, sending the entire teen and young adult populace into here. He gestured around him to make the perfect suitors who wouldn't hurt his new Brianna. Something ice-cold crept down my spine. He cleared his throat. Mr. Timberman grew, let's say, obsessed with getting revenge on these specific 4 people, so he started killing them. He coughed. Sorry, us. Killing us for the funny haha. Look at how many times I can screw with them, bit. And then recycling us into someone completely different. Our names are gone, then our personalities. Finally, our bodies are ripped to pieces and sculpted into Brianna's exes. Sam poked me in the cheek. The cycle continues. They reset your ticker and the town eats it up. They can bring back Esme, Ben, and Alex whenever they want and add curveballs. Like the bad boy colleague who becomes the fan favorite. Sam's lips curved. For some damn reason. His eyes flickered open. However, Brianna will never find a suitor because her father is a sociopath. To him and the town, his dead daughter's pathetic love life is entertainment. He held out his arm. See. I tried really hard not to look through the makeup, at noticeable skin grafts. I was a Ben, he said. Then I was an Alex, and then I was an extra. His eyes found mine, sad, suddenly. But who I was originally is kinda gone. All I remember is a deal to protect Josie. I gave myself up so they wouldn't take her. Your sister, I said. Sam nodded. His earlier words hit me. He was talking like Brianna Timberman was dead, but I was Brianna Timberman. I was rejected by Sam, yes, but I found Ben. As if he could read my mind, Sam shook his head. Look at yourself, he said, his voice shaking. And I mean really look at yourself. Sam stepped closer, because underneath all of that makeup and the prosthetics and surgery and screwed up memories, you're just another recycled lump of flesh. He prodded my temple, who thinks she is Brianna Timberman. His voice was slurring again, a fresh stream of scarlet seeping down his chin. Don't you want to know? His eyes rolled to pearly whites. Before he could finish his sentence, Sam dropped to the ground. I remember warm arms grasping hold of me, shadows with no faces. They pricked me twice in the back of my neck, a familiar voice in my ear, almost a hiss. Jasper, you are the worst, Brianna. When I came to, I was standing up somehow. At work. I am Brianna Timberman. The thoughts floated around in my head, my memory hazy. Hello? A man was waving his hands in front of me. I asked for iced coffee, lady. Jasper was serving another customer. Bree, wake the hell up. They were trying to make me think I was hallucinating, which was crazy because my fingernails were still tinted with Sam's blood. The marks he left on my wrist when he was yanking me were still there, bruised on my arm. Bree, Jasper snapped. Snap out of it and make the dude his drink. Right. The words slipped out of my mouth. He caught my eye, winking, and Brianna Timberman internally squeaked. I half wondered what he was. Was he recycled or an unwilling performer? Throughout the day, I was fully aware my words were not mine, like I was on autopilot. But not just that, my thoughts weren't mine either. I spent half of my shift staring at my colleague's biceps. During my break, I went into the bathroom and stood in front of the mirror. I am Brianna Timberman. But even when I told myself that, my eyes were too blue, my smile was too perfect, my teeth too white. My shaking hands prodded at my face, at someone else's face. So many faces, so many skin grafts. The thought was violent, sending tremors through me. How many people was I wearing? I started to claw at my arms and legs, my face. How many people had I been? I grabbed a knife and tried to slice at my face, but there was no blood. How could there be blood? When I got home, I found my family waiting for me. Mom, Dad, and Harry, all of them beaming. "Bree!" Mom stood up, her lips stretching into a grin. My mouth was already moving, but they were not my words. "Mom!" I didn't know why she was smiling so much until I saw Sam sitting at our dining room table. His smile was too big, his overexpensive shirt and pants did not suit him, and looking gross, but somehow my brain thought it was hot. The worst part is, I couldn't and still can't tell which Sam he was. Was he the guy who told me the horrific reality of my existence? Or was he another recycled, mindless suitor? "This is Samuel," Mom said, and Sam slowly nodded. He took slow steps towards me and kissed my hand. I saw the slightest smudge of scarlet in his lip, and his eyes were blank. In the corner of my eye, my father's eyes were glittering. "Hello, Brianna," Sam said, and I swore now that I was awake. The walls were wolf whistling, laughing. Ooh. My town is a blimp on the map. We're so small, so insignificant, not even a Google search will find us. I keep thinking if I tear up my skin, I will find who I am underneath. But I'm so damn scared. I don't bleed. I don't think who I was still exists under so many layers. But even if this is just a cry into the void, please help us. I don't want to be Brianna Timberman. Autopilot. Aware that you cannot move or think or breathe on your own, the words that spew from your lips are nothing more than senseless garbage to appease the masses watching your every move. You can't scream or cry or beg for mercy. All you can do is watch your body, your mouth, your thoughts be puppeteered by thousands of greedy, impatient eyes. It's like being dead and aware that I'm dead. Dead while my body dances, my mind is no longer mine. I smile a perfect smile. I don't notice the stitches holding me together. I'm not allowed to notice. So many layers of skin, flesh over flesh that is patchwork and does not belong to me. I'm not allowed to think. I'm not allowed to scream or cry or tear into layer upon layer of Brianna Timberman sculpting me into beauty. Perfection. No thoughts, except one. That suffocates me, strangling my words from my throat, and I am put into autopilot. I am Brianna Timberman. I am Brianna Timberman. I am Brianna Timberman. Felix was my latest 3-day fling. I was using him to make Sam jealous, but a drunken night had turned into another night, and suddenly it was Wednesday, and I was yet to leave his place. Damn. He was supposed to be someone I could kick to the curb, someone to take out my frustration on. Now, Felix was more than a rebound, but even tangled in his bed, I couldn't stop thinking about Sam. Sam Thwaites rejected me at 17 years old and had waltzed back into my life. As teenagers, I told him I loved him, and Sam got all flustered and started shaking his head, like I was something he didn't believe in. Sam said words like, "I didn't know you thought of me this way," and, "Wait, you liked me?" With this dumb look on his face, he told me he needed space and left me in the pouring rain. And 5 years later, he was standing in my parents' lounge. I could still smell him on my skin, and I hated it. I hated him. "Bree," Mom's smile was wide. She and Dad were obsessed with finding me a suitor. "This is Samuel." Sam Thwaites took my hand, entwining his fingers with mine. He was so warm, and I hated that I wanted to fall into him. I hated that my heart was pounding through my chest. I had already seen him, bumping into him in the snow. I had already shamelessly screwed him in a stall without truly looking at him, angry and frustrated and really, really hot. I wanted to tell him whatever he wanted to happen was over. I told him I hated him, curled against him, the two of us out of breath, my head against his chest, his head tipped back, half-lidded eyes skimming across the ceiling. The two of us were sprawled out on ice-cold tiles, his fingers stroking through my hair. I told him to leave. But there he was, standing in my parents' house. In the exposed light, Sam was maturer in the face, losing his baby fat for more curvier, handsome features. Thick brown curls hung in playful eyes that wanted a challenge. The slight curve in his lips told me everything I needed to know. Sam remembered our stupid childhood pact. I could hear it in his voice, the satisfaction dripping from his tone. "Hello, Brianna." I pulled him outside, straight into a downpour. "What are you doing here?" I demanded. Sam shrugged with a smile. "We're both adults, aren't we?" I thought back to our childhood pact. If neither of us found anyone by the age of 20, we would marry each other. "You left me." Sam stepped forward, grasping my hands. "I did," he admitted. "But I was a stupid kid, Brie. I had no idea what I was talking about, and I was scared." "Scared?" He nodded, blinking rain out of his eyes. "I was scared of losing you." I laughed incredulously. "You did lose me, Sam, when you left me in the rain." "But I'm not scared anymore." His voice was soft. He got closer, so close I could see his breath. Sam kissed me tenderly, one hand cupping my cheek, the other side sliding up my jacket. His mouth found my ear, something wet and warm oozing down my neck. "Take it." Sam's voice was different, suddenly. "Please." Pulling away from the kiss, I shoved him back. "How much is my father paying you?" Sam swiped at his bloody lips, and a question sprung to mind. Where did the blood come from? "Well," I demanded, my voice collapsing into a sob, "is my dad paying you or not? Is that why you came back?" Sam didn't answer, his face crumbling. "Bree, save it!" I left before he could fully open his mouth. Halfway down the road, I realized I was freezing cold, before a shadow loomed, an umbrella shielding me. "You look like a drowned rat." My colleague was next to me, avoiding my gaze. "Take this." He turned away from me, curling his lip. "Do whatever you want with it. I don't care." He twisted around, stuffing his hands in his pockets. The next day at work, I couldn't stop thinking about Sam. Felix, the lead singer of a local band and a law student, was the perfect distraction. I met him in a bar. He was the Aussie trying to get a Duolingo streak, downing shots like soda. His accent was cute. It reminded me of water, or maybe that was just my drunken state. The cadence in his voice was like trickling. I told him this, and he laughed. His suggestive wink took us to his apartment, and we spent the night together. After I drunkenly told him I thought he was hot, I expected it just to be a one-time thing, but then we were having sex on his kitchen counter. I told him it wasn't serious. However, a one-night stand had become more of a 3-day friends with benefits thing. Now we were sitting outside my work drinking coffee, and I was starting to reconsider my initial stand on Australian Felix. There was something about the way he smiled with all of his teeth, nervously tapping his coffee cup and occasionally losing himself completely, falling into a daydream mid-conversation. I liked it, though. I liked watching his mind jet off into space. His longing gaze was adorable. Felix was sitting awkwardly, chin resting on his fist, talking about his favorite band, and I was enraptured by caramel-colored eyes and the dimples in his cheeks. The sun was shining, and we were sitting under cherry blossoms I didn't remember seeing before. I was supposed to be working, and he had come to see me, armed with cupcakes and my favorite coffee, Dreamer Felix. Dimpled cheeks Felix. Felix with the trickly accent and slight lisp, who stumbled over his words and had a milk mustache I desperately wanted to wipe away. I did, leaning over the table and lightly brushing the curve of my finger across his upper lip. "You got a little." Felix's eyes widened. He swiped at his mouth, chuckling. That's kind of embarrassing. A loud and overly exaggerated clearing of the throat made me jump. I think I just threw up in my mouth. Looming over me like a bad smell was my colleague Jasper, scowling as usual. Standing with his arms crossed over his apron, he shot me a patronizing smile, completely blanking Felix. The boy dumped my latte down, spilling half of it across the table. Behind him, a group of teenage girls were giggling. I wasn't surprised. Jasper really could pull off any look, and just like the girls squealing over him, I couldn't resist handsome features and a killer jawline. It just sucked that he was one of the rudest people I had ever met. He was wearing the exact same shirt from yesterday, his apron flung over the top, cropped blonde hair in disarray. Running his hair through it, he groaned. "You're supposed to be working, Bree," he said in a sing-song, leaning across the table. Jasper's patronizing smile widened. "Are we done here?" I nodded. "Yeah, sorry, Jasper." "You should be." Jasper's gaze flicked to Felix. "You're a student, right?" Felix nodded slowly. "Yeah, I guess." My colleague shot him a sparkly grin. 5% off at the Crappin' Shack this weekend. Student discount. Alcohol served after 9 p.m. will be free. Whoa. Really? Felix downed the rest of his drink, his eyes wide. I glanced at his cup. I could have sworn he'd finished it. "What about parking?" Felix asked. "Well, I still get a ticket?" "Nope." Jasper shot him a grin and a thumbs up. "Make sure to bring your student ID and parking is free. It's all going down at the Crappin' Shack this Saturday with a special guest local music artist, Tiema Wright, performing his new song, 'I'm Sorry I Left You in the Rain, But Will You Marry Me?'" Both boys turned to me with matching smiles, speaking in sync. "Will you be there, Brianna?" I nodded with a grin. "You bet I will." I saluted Felix with my drink. "Shouldn't you be heading to class?" "I love you, Jasper," one of the girls squeaked from behind me. My colleague rolled his eyes, not even turning around to look at her. "I know you do." Jasper sighed, pulling out his notepad and pen. He sidestepped to the next table, serving the people next to us. He licked his finger with exaggerated slowness, flipping the page. "But you're embarrassing yourself, sweetheart." "I'm free after work," I said. "Maybe you could come back to my place?" "You're on the late shift tonight with me, so no, you're not free," Jasper said behind me. When I twisted around to shoot him a look, he was tapping his pen on his notepad mid-eye roll. "No, sir, we don't do refills. Nope, I can't make an exception, and no, complaining about it will just make me laugh." "I'll text you," I told Felix. Sounds good." He jumped up, finishing his coffee and grabbing his backpack. The Pikachu keyring on his zipper made me smile. Oi, mate, I have class, but I'll reply when I'm out, alright?" Felix lifted his hand in a wave, took 2 steps back, and was crushed by a falling sheet of glass. I'm not sure when it was my mind stirred, and I regained consciousness for the fraction of a second. It was enough for my vision to clear, my senses coming back to the surface. The never-ending script of words programmed into my brain stopped abruptly, and I was left suffocating on my own breaths. I was awake, blinking at Felix's body being peeled from concrete. Awake enough to notice my colleague visibly flinched behind his notepad when Felix died. Awake enough to be able to breathe again, coerce words in my mind. I had zero idea of who I was before Brianna Timberman, who was underneath flawless skin and manicures and sparkling teeth. My senses returned in waves. Taste. I had drank the same damn coffee 4 times and I could taste coffee grounds on my tongue. Smell. There were sweat patches staining my blouse. Touch. I could feel my coffee cup, running my finger around the rim. I am not Brianna Timberman. The thought slammed into me and I felt my hands twitch by my sides. The overwhelming urge to tear off my skin layer after layer until I found myself. When did I regain my free will? Maybe it was when Felix's blood was seeping across my shoes, his body an unrecognizable mess of stringy flesh and lumps under splinters of glass sparkling like diamonds across the sidewalk. It took me half a second to realize a woman was screaming in my face. "Oh my God, sweetie, are you okay?" Autopilot. I nodded shakily, words already tumbling out of my mouth. I'm fine. Was he your boyfriend? Autopilot. No. For some reason, my eyes found Jasper still hiding behind his notebook. He wasn't. No matter how hard I tried to fight it, Brianna's feelings were already swamping me. I felt my cheeks heat up, my stomach fluttering. Before autopilot thoughts could spring out of nowhere, I remembered my colleague's reaction to Felix's death, as well as him subtly trying to stop me from talking to Sam. There was zero doubt in my mind that Jasper didn't know what was going on. If the rest of us were recycled lumps of skin, what was he? He was a love interest, but he wasn't one of Bree's exes. Sam explained my colleague was a curveball, the so-called bad boy playing with Brianna Timberman feelings. With little to no thoughts of my own, I stated the facts in my head. My life wasn't real. I was nothing but recycled flesh, sculpted and molded into a dead prom queen with her memories. That thought still had not sunk in yet, and when I started to register it, all I wanted to do was peel my skin from my bones until I found myself, who I was, hiding under patchwork flesh. So many Briannas stitched onto me, so many lost souls. I had been on autopilot for days. All that I had left when I came to was a vague memory of every other death. Ben, Alex, and Esme. Car crash, suicide, carbon monoxide poisoning. Now Felix, crushed to death. Each of their deaths had been voted M by the townspeople. It was only a matter of time before Felix would be erased from existence too. Sam, or the boy underneath him, had shown me who I really was, a lump of flesh sculpted into Brianna Timberman. Sam had the same fate. He showed me where he came from, a factory that had turned the town's teen populace into the exact same four faces. Brianna Timberman's exes. Ben, Alex, Esme, and Sam. First, he was an Alex, then a Ben, and then an extra, who tried to warn me before being abruptly converted into Sam Thwaites, a brand new love interest and Brianna's childhood friend. Sam told me Brianna's ex's deaths were a joke, her love life controlled by the town through a popularity poll. Brianna had committed suicide years ago, but the town were obsessed. They wanted to watch her life. They wanted to see which person she would choose, voting for their favorites while dooming the loser to a fate worse than death. The least popular love interest would die brutally, and the cycle would continue. In this case, it was Felix. The boy suppressed under Sam had shown me the truth, only to be captured and turned into one of my parents' suitors. The realization was like a kick in the face. I was alone, awake and aware of two bright lights on my face, and unable to cry out or scream. Brianna Timberman was dead, but according to the town, the show must go on. Staying very still, I was suddenly well aware of patrons on their phones. I glanced at a teenage girl who was rapidly swiping right on an image of my colleague, while a man holding a briefcase lazily swiped left on Sam. "Your boyfriend should have been more careful," I blinked. Jasper was in front of me, arms folded across his apron. Sam talked about a red zone in the bathroom stalls a few days ago. He said it was where they couldn't see us, and I would be fully conscious, severed from whatever was in my head. Jasper waved his hand in front of my face, and it suddenly occurred to me that if I wanted answers, such as where the red zone was located, I need my colleague's help, whether he was awake or not. Brianna Timberman was in full control of my mind, however, so regaining free will was getting progressively harder. 2 days later, after being stuck on autopilot, I was serving a woman trying to calm her screaming kid. Felix didn't have a funeral, and his name was already forgotten. In my half-awake state, though, I remembered him. I had since met two people. Adriana, who was a quick makeout in a bathroom stall. She smelled just like Esme, roses and cheap perfume. Ren, the older college professor who I drunkenly kissed in the back of an Uber. I can't pinpoint the times when I was fully awake, fully in control. I was perfecting a foam heart on a customer's latte when I realized I really wanted to screw my colleague. The thought was explosive, immediately setting my cheeks on fire. Trying to suppress it was like fighting a losing battle. "Hey," Jasper sided in front of me, tearing me out of my thoughts, or Brianna's thoughts. I'd spent the last hour dazedly staring at his wonderfully sculpted jawline, unable to look at anything else. Brianna liked to fantasize, and her mind wasn't exactly PG-13. It's not like I had control of my mouth. Autopilot meant my body and mind worked for me. I was just lucky to be conscious, or at least semi-conscious. I had a semblance of a plan, and the first part was finding Sam Thwaites, or the boy sculpted into Sam. The last time I saw him before I went on autopilot, I had no idea if he was awake or just a really good performer. The red zone was all I could think of. If I wanted out of this nightmare, I needed to find it. However, thinking is kind of hard when all I can think about was my colleague's biceps. I couldn't take my eyes off the way he swung a carton of milk mid-conversation with our manager. Jasper caught my eye, scowling. "Bree, get your damn head out of the clouds." My colleague's tone was so shamelessly unapologetic, a group of girls in the queue burst into giggles. The guy was like a circus attraction. And now that I had a semblance of actual thought, I realized our only customers were women, with the odd man every blue moon. Jasper cleared his throat, setting the milk down. "Okay, look, I'm sorry your boyfriend got flattened or whatever, but you need to stop moping around like someone freaking died." Autopilot. There was a bright light suddenly. I shoved him, hard. "Why do you have to always be such a dick?" Jasper was unfazed. He didn't even stumble. I felt it, a shiver creeping down my spine, an insatiable need clouding my thought process. Brianna Timberman was hot, very hot. Jasper's attitude, his movement, everything about him and being so close to him was making her flustered. She was sweating under her apron, and all she could look at, all she could focus on, was her colleague, who was, against all odds, still playing hard to get. All around us, patrons were silent. The girls in the queue started nudging each other. My colleague stepped forward, his breath tickling my face. He was a little too close. "I should be asking you the same thing," he murmured, lips twitching into a smirk. "You've been staring at me all morning." Jasper stepped closer, backing me into the counter. I could feel my cheeks getting hotter and hotter, my thoughts clouding. Another step, and we were nose to nose. Jasper cocked his head. "Do I have something on my face, Bree?" It took every morsel of self-control to turn away from him. Back to the queue. I smiled widely at the customer, making lattes and coffees, but my stomach was dancing, my mind foggy and distant. It didn't help that every time Jasper shoved past me, he made it intentional, and the friction of his body against mine, his hands brushing my waist, was driving me crazy. Sam mentioned aphrodisiacs being pumped through the vent in the bathroom stalls to influence intimacy between Brianna and her love interests. I had a feeling that that is what was happening. Still, though, when I peeked at the ceiling, I couldn't see a vent. I couldn't stop my own wandering hands every time he passed me. It was a game, in a way. Who would crack first? I was in the break room trying to cool myself off when Jasper stepped in front of me. "Vegan milk," he said. Despite acting cool and collected, maintaining his smirk, I glimpsed a noticeable red blush spreading across his cheeks. His lips found my ear. "Can you help me find it?" Autopilot. Autopilot had taken us into the dark. My body and emotions and feelings were no longer mine. Choking, drowning, in fog that contorted me into exactly what these people wanted. I'm not sure how I got from the break room to the storage closet, pinned against a shelf, half naked, my legs wrapped around my colleague. He started, of course, with his mouth latched to my ear, muttering about mulberry milk offers before his lips found mine. His breath was heavy, his hands finding my waist and sliding up my shirt. God, I pretended a lot of things weren't happening for the sake of not losing my damn mind. I pretended I couldn't hear the wolf whistles and squeals rumbling in the walls surrounding us, that the pleasure riding through me was mine and not theirs. We had an audience. Somehow that was even worse than my body being used to satisfy others. I pretended I wasn't fully exposed, and even worse, that I wanted it. I wanted to get closer to him, pressing my mouth into his clammy neck and burying my face in his shoulder. I wanted him to continue, his lips in my hair. Tipping my head back, my vision was blurring, but I could see it. Right above our heads, there was the vent pumping us full of aphrodisiacs. Sex drugs, I thought dizzily. I laughed, and it was so out of character, Jasper pulled away for a moment, brows knitting in confusion. The red zone. I managed to grit out through Brianna Timberman's mouth. Where is it? When he didn't respond, I grabbed the back of his head, forcing him to look at me. Under the dim light of a flickering bulb, my colleague's eyes were half-lidded, his pupils in dilated pools of confusing black. I had no doubt he hadn't been heavily drugged. Jasper kissed me deeply again, and when I managed to shove him away, he tightened his grip on my waist, pressing his face into my shoulder. The red zone, I repeated, my thoughts reduced to soup. I only had a certain amount of time, and that time was running out. I shoved him again. This time I felt filthy. His clammy hands all over my skin were like poison. I felt suffocated every time he leaned in. The worst part is that this man had zero choice either. The thought struck, sending violent tremors through me. How many times had my corpse of a body been used like this? How many times have I been screwed or screwed someone else for this town's sickening satisfaction obsession with Brianna Timberman? Tell me where it is, I said through a shriek. Jasper slowly started to respond, blinking rapidly. What? He was a good performer, awake or not. You knew what was going on when your friends dragged Sam away. I kept my voice low, kissing him harder to keep the narrative going, especially when I could hear the dull sound of pounding feet. These freaks wanted us to have sex. I made sure to let my mouth linger on his, aware of every inch of the two of us being watched, analyzed, probably photographed and posted to the town website. I saw you flinch when Alex died, which means you were awake. I pulled away, slowly, playing with the collar of his shirt, but at the same time I was looking for every possible escape route. Sam was right. To my left, I could see the subtle red light dancing across Jasper's jaw, and to my right, another skimming across my neck. So I grabbed the boy, shoving him against the shelf, switching our positions. You tracked me down that day, I spoke softly, pretending to bury my head in his chest. You knew exactly where I was, and you took Sam away. So you know exactly where the red zone is. You know where he was hiding. Jasper surprised me with a chuckle. When I lifted my gaze, my vision was fuzzy, my body hot and flustered, and yet I was shivering. His head was tipped back, lazy eyes tracking the ceiling. He was following the exact same red light. You're a funny girl, Bree, he murmured. My colleague leaned forward, keeping up the facade for our unseen audience. He was doing exactly what they wanted. The curve of his back almost too perfectly lit up. It was exactly what Brianna Timberman had fantasized. Jasper's panting breaths found my ear. Keep talking, though. You're going to screw both of us over. His words sent shivers trickling down my spine. In the corner of my eye, the red light was visible. If the room was too dark, that meant they were tracking and filming our movements. I didn't think. Grabbing my colleague's shoulders, I yanked him to his knees, dropping with him. Risking a glance behind us, the light was gone, which meant, for at least I hoped, that they were out of shot. Jasper regarded me lazily, inclining his head. What are you? I slammed my hand over his mouth, cutting him off. The red zone. You know exactly where it is, I hissed, tightening my grip on his shoulder. When he played stupid, I dug my fingernails in. You're not an ex, I said. So what are you? Jasper? My colleague muffled under my hand, pointing to his name tag. When I removed my hand, his lips spread out into a grin, but I caught his eyes frantically searching for those red lights. I have no idea what you're talking about, Bree. He raised his voice significantly. But did you know vegan milk is made with only the best pasteurized milk from Mulberry Farms? This guy wasn't going to sing, so I had to get creative. Above us, 3 red lights were scanning the dark. They were looking for us. Please, I whispered, searching his eyes for a hint of a human being. You're as much as a victim as me, right? Don't you want to be out of here? Jasper responded with his signature eye roll, maintaining that plastic damn grin. I have zero idea what you're talking about, but do you know what I really want to talk about? Mulberry Farms milk. I couldn't stop myself. Maybe it was frustration, desperation, or a mix of both. I wasn't fully thinking straight when I grasped the back of his head and slammed Jasper's skull into the metal edge of the shelf. I regretted it immediately when the guy's eyes rolled to pearly whites, his body going limp in my arms, head lolling onto his shoulder. When a single rivulet of red slid from his nose, I realized he was like Sam. Sam, who must have given himself a head injury to wake himself up. A severing. Under the influence of the narrative, as well as aphrodisiacs choking my thoughts into arousal, I never really saw my colleague's body. I only saw what Brianna wanted to see. Lean muscles in a perfectly sculpted V-line. But now, away from the cameras and in the fading light of a dying bulb, I saw them, running my trembling fingers over rugged stitches and patchwork skin, molding this boy, and so many others, into the perfect man. I could see where parts of him had been replaced and cut away, his entire face airbrushed into a viewer's fantasy. But looking closer, his real eyes were mismatched contortions of blue and browns. I waited for the sarcastic eye roll and immediate plug-in advertisement. Instead, though, the man's expression was softer. He looked dazed, confused, blinking rapidly. But as he slowly drank in his surroundings, his expression started to twist into fear, pain, anger. Anger that was so vast, so overwhelming, that he dropped to his knees, scrubbing at his face. I didn't know what to say. Sorry didn't mean anything. Sam was gentle when he told me I was recycled skin, nothing but a flesh puppet for a psychotic town. But I didn't give him a chance to take it in. I plunged him directly into this cruel, horrifying reality. Jasper's frenzied gaze went to his hands, and then his hands were in his hair, clawing down his face. His lips parted like he was going to speak, but I don't think he could. Jasper's eyes filled with frustrated tears, terror that was something I could relate to, an existential dread and confusion and pain that was tearing him apart. I knew the questions at the back of his head. Why me? Why was this happening to me? How can I be real when the rest of me is nothing? I felt my own fingers trace the scars across my own stomach, scars that only I could feel, deeply indented into my skin. Skin that I wanted to rip into, to tear away. Because I was somewhere, right? Underneath all of this, my old self was there. I had to be because I just can't be this. Jasper stumbled back, clumsily on his feet, embarrassed and confused, trying to hide himself, when blood started seeping freely from his nose and down his chin. I found my voice. Hey. I spoke softly and his eyes finally found mine, resembling a startled deer. Can you tell me who you are? I swallowed thick slime creeping into my mouth. Who you were? For a sobering moment, it was just the two of us, not Brianna and Jasper. His eyes found mine, truly drinking me in, and something sparked in his expression, recognition or familiarity. His hands cupped my face, fingers running down my cheeks. The man was mute, speechless, and yet somehow he was crying. Crying for me, a stranger. Somehow, though, my hands, or at least part of my hand, the stitched and rugged parts of me, responded to his touch. Bree, Jasper? When the door flew open, I jumped to my feet, pulling the boy with me. They were paranoid, I thought, mirroring Sam's earlier words. The town was making sure we were still satisfying them. To my surprise, Jasper's eyes dilated back to brown. His voice was choked up, more of a growl. Give us a sec, all right? Autopilot. I bent down and grabbed my shirt, throwing it on. Jasper buttoned up his own, brushing himself down. He stepped back, winking. Same time tomorrow? Autopilot. Brianna didn't speak. Instead, she headed towards the door. She wanted him to chase after her for more, but not before Jasper came close, hissing in my ear. Do you want to go on a suicide mission? Fine. I was already pulling away, or Brianna was pulling away because my body was being forced forwards. Still, he held me, tightening his grip. The thrift store across the street. Stall 3 in the bathroom, he said. Just please. Jasper's tone softened. Please never do that to me again. So, I had a location. The problem was actually getting to it. Autopilot. It was stronger, forcing me onto the stage. I spilled coffee over a customer and, of course, Jasper came to the rescue. When I dropped a tray full of drinks, slipping on someone's mess, his arms were already wrapped around me, catching me before I could hit the ground. When our eyes met, Brianna Timberman's heart fluttered. The people surrounding us were already swiping right on their phones. Jasper helped me stand up. "You should be more careful, you idiot," he grumbled. I nodded, straightening up. Jasper leaned against the refrigerator. "Do you know Sam Thwaites?" I didn't look up from making coffee. "Yeah, he was." I blinked away memories of the two of us as kids. "Just a friend." "He's bad news," Jasper said. "The guy's working for your dad." "That's not... that's not true." "Oh, really?" He stepped in front of me, head tilted to the side. "So, he just came back into your life, for no reason." "I don't want to talk about Sam." "But did he leave you anything?" Jasper murmured. "Like I don't know, parting gift, maybe?" Before I could reply, my colleague blurted, "What were you wearing when we were..." He looked around nervously. "Looking for vegan milk?" I don't know." I prodded at my apron. "This, I guess. Why?" "Oh, no reason." He winked at me. "Did you know my aunt died recently?" "No." "Well, her funeral was all sorted within a matter of days." Jasper continued, speaking through that same grin. "Callister Funeral Care really did give me the comfort me and my family needed when we were in mourning." Autopilot. I woke up halfway through my shift the next day, in the middle of serving 3 boys. Immediately, I dropped what I was doing, darting to the door. "I'm going on my break," I yelled, grabbing my jacket and pushing through a group of girls. The town thrift store was empty. I was pushing through the door when a girl pushed past me, hard enough to knock my jacket out of my hands. When I scooped it up, something dropped out of my pocket. Inside was a single black disc-shaped thing. I stuck the plastic down my bra. "Bree, what are you doing here?" Lifting my head, my colleague was standing over me. Jasper's smile was a little too big. When he helped me up, his voice was a sharp breath. "How exactly are you planning on getting in the men's bathroom, genius?" I had a way, but neither of us were going to like it. Autopilot, however, did my job for me. I was in a bathroom stall on my knees when reality hit, and I shook my head of fog. Jasper was already pulling me to my feet, pressing his index over his lips and motioning for me to be quiet. He pointed above our head. Instead of a window, there was a hatch. "Red Zone 2, he mouthed. "Go!" I nodded, climbing onto the toilet bowl, throwing myself through the hatch. This time, I fell directly into a pile of still wet and still warm bodies. But these weren't Alex's or Ben's or Sam's. My own face, my perfectly molded and sculpted Barbie doll face stared back at me. Brianna Timberman was everywhere. Her glazed blue eyes and wide smile were suffocating me. It was when I stood up did I start to see patches. I saw skin and hair and torn and stained clothes with body parts still attached to them. Different faces. Girls. Beautiful girls with their heads severed, their bodies reduced to mutilated flesh. Smiles stretched into skeletal grimaces, and eyes scooped from the sockets. As if I felt connection with the doll pieces around me, I started to claw at my legs, like I could find my own skin, revel in it. I stood up, and at the sound of a mechanical whirring, in front of me was a blood-stained conveyor belt that wasn't moving, that was frozen, just like the room with Sam's, Ben's, Alex's, and Esme's. I felt my fingernails rip into my arms and my face. My gaze was glued to the cutoffs, the human body scattering metal flooring. Is this what I was? I ripped into the skin of my face until I felt the sting, but there was no blood, nothing to remind me I was human. "Bree, you need to get out of here now." I was barely aware Jasper had joined me. He fished up my jacket. "What are you?" I asked him, my voice shuddering. "Wrong." His response surprised me. "Which is why they're going to kill me off soon, and I'll die the way I was supposed to." Jasper's words collapsed into white noise. Instead, I was someplace else, a memory splintering into dozens of memories. I was Clara, Jamie, Lily, Kira, Becca, Elizabeth. I was running, screaming. A guy was in front of me, tugging my hand. "The far gate is the exit." The voice in front was female. "If we reach it, we'll get out of here. Just keep running." A sharp flash, and I was standing stiff, upright. I was moving, A long line of girls in front of me. I felt them writhing and tangled around my bones, every girl I was made out of. The cruel needle plunging into the back of her neck, instantly killing her. A second needle injecting a solution that kept the body alive. Her thoughts and feelings and sensations, all of it was kept alive, conscious. The whirring blades coming down and skinning away her face, her eyes, her lips, her screams falling on deaf ears. Her sculpted body, naked and raw, was shoved forwards. The next metal arms made sure to stitch up loose skin, adding and removing and slicing away what was no longer needed, adding a metal exoskeleton to ensure no damage. Then came clothes, a yellow summer dress, exactly what she was wearing on the day Sam Thwaites dumped her in the rain. The final metal arm was more of a brush, a thing scraping across the face to make sure Brianna was perfect. When she tumbled off the conveyor belt, smiling widely, I wasn't Clara or Jamie or Lily. Damn, I was Brianna Timberman. Standing at the end of the line with his arms folded was Brianna's father. His smile was proud, eyes glinting with madness. He stroked my face, his eyes filling with tears. She's perfect. The memory shattered, coming apart when something pricked my neck. There was a blinding white light on me. "We've got her, sir." Muffled cry, and I could just see Jasper being wrenched back. "Hey, I did what you told me to do. The pocket is empty." His voice deepened into a growl. "Let me go." The figure who grabbed him seemed to enjoy his discomfort. She had wandering hands. "5 more seasons, pretty boy," the woman hummed. "Brianna may have forgiven you, but your debt is with Mr. Timberman." "Wait, no, we had a deal, you piece of—" I was forced onto my stomach. "And the love interest who appears to be faulty. It's the tracer who is supposed to be following her." The voice swam in and out as my mind plunged. "Yes, I'll get him remodeled immediately. Brianna is A-OK, sir. Do you have my permission to proceed?" Autopilot. This time it was deep, dragging me to impossible depths. "Brianna." Mom's voice snapped me back to half fruition. I was standing in my parents' hallway in front of Sam. Sam, who had lowered himself to one knee, a ring pinched between his fingers. "Saying yes." Mom stood behind me, standing with my brother. Autopilot. My lips spread into a smile, 2 bright lights on the 2 of us. "Yes," I whispered, when he wrapped his arms around me. "I'll marry you." The walls around us were oohing and awing. When the lights switched off and Sam's smile stayed plastic and taut, I realized the boy underneath was gone. But it was when his head was in my chest did I remember his earlier words. "Please, take it." Autopilot. The day skipped forward. I was only aware of my mother's hands tangled in my hair. She was dragging me down the hallway. "Don't worry, Brianna," she said gleefully, tightening her hold. "No daughter of mine is this much of a nuisance, and the show must go on." I was shoved into a room on autopilot, but after regaining myself, I can break myself out of autopilot. The medic came to see me. According to her, I'm slightly severed. They're going to fix me, like what they did to Sam. "Look, it's been 3 hours and I've been thinking about a lot of things. I know you can't save me. I live in the blip of a town you can't find on Google search. I know I'm a prisoner. But I think I know how to save myself and the others. Mainly, I want to cut Brianna Timberman away and look underneath. But I'm terrified that under all of these layers, there will be nothing left. I've already done most of it. Right now, half of my face is caught under my nails. But I'm not. I can't find me. I'm not bleeding. I can't see anything that looks like me. And when they come back, they're going to patch me back up. They'll stick someone else's flesh over me and call me Brianna. But I'm not Brianna. I'm not any of those girls. So who am I?